commonly referred to as the Vimoutiers Tiger. This is chassis number 251184, turret number 224, belonging to the 102nd SS Heavy Panzer Battalion that came under the 2nd SS Panzer Corps. They would cut their teeth on the Eastern Front against Russia in 1943, before being sent to Normandy in 1944, where they were almost completely destroyed. Many of them in and around Falaise, like this tank was. More on this shortly. They would eventually be pulled back to Germany to reform before being encircled in the defence of Berlin, where they ceased to exist. This is a later Model E, so depending on how you look at it, an upgraded version, but also less sophisticated for ease of manufacturing, and by then the steadily decreasing supply of materials, evidenced by such things as the low-profile cast cupola and steel road wheels like the Tiger II. Changing from the traditional rubber wheels to steel with internal rubber dampeners was supposed to reduce the wear on the road wheels, which was true, but they caused significant wear to the tracks instead and made the ride terrible for the crew. Some crews reportedly swapped them out for rubber ones if they got their hands on some. The steel wheels could also increase the noise signature of the already quite loud vehicle. Staying with the tracks for a moment, if you look closely, they are fitted in opposite directions. This wasn't a mistake. Originally, the tracks were handed, meaning you would have a different design of track for both the left and right sides. But this also meant that crews and logistics needed to carry twice the amount for repairs, and this was quickly phased out and replaced by a single version of track that would fit both sides. The Tiger's enormous weight meant that it needed extremely wide tracks to distribute the ground pressure more effectively. There were narrower transport tracks because the Tiger was actually too wide for most transport, but the wider combat tracks that were meant to be fitted once the tank was delivered stuck out much further. This became quite common in other tanks as they were up-armoured, or sometimes special extensions could be fitted. Tiger 1s went through numerous changes over their lifetime, many being a mixture of new and old, usually after being damaged and a part was replaced, or in some cases the tank was sent to be refurbished at a factory. Field and even factory modifications during assembly were applied. As the war dragged on, recycled parts were even fitted, making some very hard to identify without serial numbers. Originally, the Tiger 1s were hurried into production to counter the Soviet medium T-34s and heavy KV-1s. It took some already existing design ideas, some dating back to the mid-30s, and in true German fashion, it would then be extremely over-engineered, which added to both its effectiveness and its unreliability. It was meant to not be equal to its adversaries, but surpass them. But this would make it extremely heavy, at around 57 tons fully laden. This weight meant that it could not cross many bridges it would encounter, so originally it was designed to be submersible to a depth of 4.5 meters. Another feature dropped for ease of manufacturing. To give an idea of how rushed its production was, on the 15th of April 1942, the turret was mated to the first chassis. 2 days later, on the 17th, with minutes to spare, it was loaded onto a train to be taken for evaluation and testing. On the 19th, it arrived to be shown to Hitler on his birthday. It suffered numerous problems, mainly due to it having been hastily thrown together, but a design was chosen and the Tiger 1 was born. It was to cost almost 2.5 times more than a Panzer IV and twice as much as a Panther to construct, but it was originally seen as a stopgap tank to break through initially, to then be supported by the less armoured Panzer IIIs and IVs. Sure, it was underpowered, thirsty and not particularly manoeuvrable, despite the 700 horsepower provided by the Maybach V12 HL230 engines, but despite its flaws, it proved to be a formidable tank, as I described in another video. Its thick, homogeneous armour proved in areas to be impenetrable to most tank guns at the time, and its main armament, the 8.8cm L56, rendered everything it would face, even after World War II, vulnerable, even out to thousands of metres. The British, finding that 5 shots fell within a group as small as 16 by 18 inches at 1200 metres, and even a high probability of hitting a moving target at similar distances, a lot of this came down to very good German optics, an advantage they had in World War I. and still to this day some of the world's best sights are made in Germany. So the tank known as the Vimoutiers Tiger would see extensive fighting in Normandy all the way up to the Falaise pocket, where it would remain nearby to this day. The tank facing down the hill, as it has for decades, is actually entirely the wrong direction. At the time of its attempted escape from the Falaise pocket, it was heading east up the hill out of Vimoutiers towards a German fuel dump at a nearby chateau. With only around 5 or 6 kilometres to go on the 19th of August, it ran out of fuel along with dozens of other tanks around the town, a lot of which were taken to the nearby scrapyard at Trun after the war. The Trun scrapyard closed in the 1980s, selling its remaining stock to the Zimmerit Museum that resulted in several restored tanks now on display and a whole host of parts in their inventory. The fact these vehicles were allowed to run out of fuel so close to a fuel dump shows how desperate the German situation had become, and it clearly wasn't an isolated issue. I'd be interested to find out quite how many were abandoned due to a failure in logistics, although we may never know. After the tank ran out of fuel, its crew scuttled it, and it did cause significant damage, but having seen much worse, one could assume it was also low on ammunition, because if it was fully stopped, then it certainly would not look how it does now. The Allies arrived shortly after, and 2 bulldozers of the Black Watch Royal Highland Regiment simply pushed the tank off the road into a ditch, where it would sit for 31 years until 1975. The original scrap owner died in the mid-1960s, and it was sold to a com-based scrap dealer, who then arrived to cut it up several years later. But the locals intervened and stopped them. By this time it was a local monument. The local pressure to save the tank caused it to appear in the After the Battle magazine in May 1975. If you want to learn about that visit, the link is below. That visit helped it to be saved in October of that year, and after the town paid 6,000 francs to the scrap merchant in Caen, a local man by the name of Alain Redoux pulled the Tiger from the ditch it was slowly sinking further into. Due to the weight of the tank and the elevation of the ditch where it lay, several machines were brought up for its removal. But even the turret had to be removed to make it possible. The surrounding trees and bushes were also cleared to give access. After inspection, it was clear that the scrapmen had done significant damage before they were stopped. The interior had been gutted and the torsion bars had been cut, which is why it now rests on a special concrete plinth to raise it up from the floor. The plinth was added around the 2000s. Gas axes had been used in an attempt to cut it into smaller, manageable chunks. A lot of easily removable parts have been taken over the years too. Some were simply replaced by flat steel plate to stop people climbing inside. These included the commanders, loaders, drivers and gunners' hatches. The majority of the rear engine deck was also missing, and it was replaced using steel plate and Panzer IV parts, possibly taken from Alain Redoux's personal collection or from the nearby tank graveyard at Trun. The work that was carried out was done by Mr. Redoux himself, welding up the damage and giving it a coat of paint for protection. When he was finished, he then welded AR onto the turret. It has actually undergone several attempted restorations over the years, none of which have been entirely correct, and have actually seen the remainder of its original Zimmerit anti-tank mine coating removed. These were carried out in 1975, 1982 and 2002, and a decision was made in 2012 that it required a more in-depth restoration in 2013. This never happened, and in fact I mentioned in my video last year that the town had decided to restore it for the 80th anniversary in 2024. Spoiler, that didn't happen either. There was even talk about the tank museum at Zimmerit getting involved, but the information I have I will upload in a separate video. A fence was erected in 2018, but this did little more than cost the town money, and I've personally watched many people simply climb over it, as you can see from the damage that has been done to the fence. I'm sure a couple of happy feet won't do as much damage as a scrapman or 80 years outside. Apart from interested parties, usually children climbing on the tank, or people removing souvenirs or taking photos, its only actual use over the years, albeit relatively odd, was that it was used during elections to write either oui or non on the side of it, as you can see here from this photo. I guess it was quite a statement writing your political views on the side of a once feared main battle tank from World War II, standing watch over your town, and the only Tiger I to remain on the battlefield. The Vimoutiers Tiger would not only survive the Battle of Normandy, the German disaster at Falaise, its attempted scuttling by its crew, over 30 years in a ditch, but also scrap metal merchants attempting to dismantle it, which you can see the evidence of where they tried to use a gas axe to cut it up. It is one of only a handful of Tiger Is still in existence, and is certainly a formidable sight.